Hello, everyone, and welcome to part one of Eyes Wide Open, the best of 2024. These are some of my favorite episodes to do because I really enjoy going back over the year and taking a look at some of my favorite episodes with my favorite guests and my favorite clips. And in this particular episode, part one, which is going to be covering things like Therapy Jeff and I talking about youth sports experiences and how they promoted toxic masculinity. Timmy Gibson and how to flirt with someone and not be creepy. Stef Rocks is going to share some of her life behind the scenes of rock concerts and rock broadcasting. Roberta Blevins talking about how big MLM is using lobbying to exploit trauma and to remain legal. I'll talk to, or will reflect, I should say, on my time with Danielle Roberts and the 32-hour work week. Is that possible in the United States? And so much more. So I hope you enjoy this best of 2024 edition of Eyes Wide Open. Next week is going to be best of 2024 edition of Eyes Wide Open, reality TV focused. So be sure to check that out, and I hope you enjoy. Are you going through life blind? This is Eyes Wide Open with Nick Thompson. On this podcast, we share knowledge and stories that build human connection while elevating stigmatized societal issues such as mental health, holistic wellness, culture, free speech, and more. All to ensure we show up in the world with our eyes wide open.
Adults, it doesn't matter, but it was real cute having like a real younger kid brother who was like looking up to me, and he also painted his nails when I painted my nails in high school. So it was pretty adorable.
The irony of your goth story and the baseball story. So back to Chicago Bears, right? Rumored to draft Caleb Williams, who's going to be number one for those of you who don't follow football. But there was this whole scandal that he was wearing pink nail polish a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really?
And Chicago, like melted down over it. And it's like this huge thing people are still talking about. It's like,
really?
Who cares if he can throw touchdowns? Like,
right. Yeah.
Let him be himself.
Exactly. Oh,
yeah.
Fuck. I hate that.
Yeah, me too. I don't get why. I mean, people should just be free to be who they are if they're not hurting other people. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, people get so triggered by what other people are doing. Like who cares if he's painting his nails? Who cares?
Yeah, who gives a shit? But there's a long, toxic masculinity has been intertwined in sports and everything else, but especially sports for so long. And it's such a manly thing to do, and so you're supposed to look like a man and act like a man and be real strong and tough, and that is there should not be any ounce of feminism or something on you, and nail polish is very femmy, right? So yeah, I hope that he can paint his nails and throw a bunch of touchdowns, and we can all evolve with him.
Me too. I would actually love if he did keep painting his nails, if that's what he wants to do, because I just want to see how he plays football. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
On the toxic masculinity thing, though, it's funny you say that, because masculine, feminine, I think those are just thrown around and we don't even need those really in our vocabulary. But I am a sensitive person, both about myself and then for others, right? And I always kind of got that, man up. Why are you friends? Why are most of your friends girls? All of that kind of don't cry, all of that stuff. And it is just so I didn't even think about it with this Caleb Williams situation, but it's just so intertwined that it evokes anger from people.
It's really intertwined. When I first started playing baseball as a kid, I was not a very good hitter, so I'd have I'd strike out a lot, and every time I struck out, I'd want to cry because I was so upset about it, but I knew that my dad would be so embarrassed. And I got the there's no crying in baseball line before that was a fucking line in a movie. That was yeah. So there was I really wonder what would have happened if I was allowed to be my sensitive self while on the baseball field, and it was comforted or understood, or there was compassion, and but there was no space for emotions and sensitivity on the field, and that really stunted my emotional development, and that's kind of a tragedy.
And you know what too? Now I didn't expect us to go into the sports talk here, but this is fun. You
Uh-huh.
know, it's interesting because if you were to have struck out and probably gone to the sidelines or the dugout, I guess would be, and you
Right.
would have like kind of thrown your batting helmet down or something, that would have been acceptable,
Right.
right?
Good
But if you were
point.
to cry, that wouldn't have been. And I think about this too. Like I always go back to the NFL because that's the sport I watch the most. But people love Tom Brady's passion when he would go and throw his helmet down and yell at guys. But if he were to go and cry at the end of a lost game or Super Bowl, people would
Hmm.
say, all
Hmm.
sorts of names that I'm not going to say here to describe him.
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
just like, it's all emotion. It's just toxic masculinity and, even feminine in some cases. Like you're
Sure.
supposed to do and behave one or the other.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like the and the thing is that like under the anger of people like throwing their helmets down or like tossing the Gatorade table or whatever it is, under that anger, which is a secondary emotion, is a more primary emotion of sadness. So like they should, if they were
Mm-hmm.
even more like in line with their feelings and could like be congruent with them like behaviorally, then they would be really sad or they would be really teary or they would need a hug from their coach, right? Like that would be a lot more genuine. And yeah, that's not there at all.
At all. That
Yeah.
was one of the reasons I didn't like to, I shouldn't say I didn't like to play sports, but man, I I'd like never cry now, which I know is like a result of not really being able to growing up. And so I think about like sports and stuff. And there's this one time I had, this is like the most traumatizing sports experience I had. I didn't ever want to play again, but we were not good in basketball at my tiny little Catholic school. We never won. I think we won one game in like my 3 years that I played. And
Oh,
there was one where we were going to beat a team that we never had any business even competing with. And I'm 6'2" in like eighth grade, so
okay.
the plan is to get me the ball for a
Right.
layup underneath the net.
Right.
I get fouled, 2 shots, miss them both. Okay, no time on the clock,
Mm.
miss them both. Someone jumped early, so I get a third one
Oh shit.
from the foul,
Uh-huh.
missed it, and we lost. It
Oh,
was, and
crushing.
I never wanted to do it again. I cried. It was so embarrassing, shame, disappointment. But
Oh,
that was
God.
I wasn't allowed to
There's
cry. I
there's
was made
so
fun of.
much, yeah, there's so much pressure and there's so many people watching you and there's like it feels so meaningful and you let down your team and your coach and your community and the fans and yourself and your family. So of course you're gonna have like a huge emotional reaction, yet there's like no space for it. That's not okay. When that would be
None.
like the most normal human reaction to have in that incredibly specific, unique, crazy experience.
Yeah, exactly. And same for you, striking out. But
Thank you.
we're making something out of all of this, I guess,
We
right?
are. Yeah.
And my big thing is how to have conversation without being creepy. How can you express interest without being like, like I really, being too needy and too, because I did fancy her. I definitely fancied her, and I
Hmm.
was like, okay, Timmy, be cool, be cool, be cool. Just calm down. And so I had to talk to myself a lot, but then I just remembered, you know what? Just be myself. Just be you. Be genuine. Be authentic. Be true to yourself. And that's the thing that I struggle with that. Honestly, I did. And
Hmm.
that might've been the Christian element too. But it was like
Oh,
I
it's the
couldn't,
shame. It's the
yeah, the
shame
shame and the
mechanism. Yeah.
guilt. I couldn't fully be, I was partially authentic, but it was like I couldn't. What do you want me to be? How do you want me to be? Yo, you want me to
Yeah.
like country music? I'll like country music. Oh, you want me to be into hip hop? I'm into hip hop. And
I
then
draw the line at country music, though.
polka. I don't do polka. So I finally just realized, you know what? Just be you and live your authentic self, which a lot of that my tattoos have a lot to do with. There's a long story here, Nick, that I could get into at some other time, but there's a lot of things that I wasn't being true to myself when I was super religious. When I
Hmm.
left religion and felt free, I was like, man, I'm free to be me. And it didn't do what Christians think. When you leave Christianity, they think, oh, he's going to go to the dark side and live this
Devil.
lascivious, crazy life. The
Devil
reality
got
is,
a hold of Timmy.
well, yeah, I actually would, if technically I'm more moral today than I ever was. And I'm living my true, authentic self. And so, go figure, right? I'm not living in a van down by the river hooked on drugs. It just took me down a different path. And one of the things that I learned is just 100% authenticity. I'm going to be real. If it offends you, that's on you. That's not on me.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be me. And when I met my now wife, Jessica's her name, I just was like, I'm going to be me. I'm going to 100% be me. I'm not going to cater myself, my personality. I'm not going to cater anything to just try to win her over. I'm just going to show up as me. And that's what she did. She's my inspiration. She's so authentic. It's like every time I introduce her to anybody, they could be a minister. I could introduce her to my friend that's struggling with addiction. I can introduce her to anybody, and she's always the same. I'm always just so impressed by that. Like, I'm like, babe, you're just you wherever we are. I have found myself being more of a chameleon throughout life. Around these people, I'm this way. Around these people, I'm this way. And so she's been a big inspiration and really has helped me become just my authentic self, which is, again, another thing about a relationship. You should always find yourself in a relationship, not lose yourself.
Yes.
That's a big key. People get married and all of a sudden they find they're living this life that they never would have wanted to live, and they're just so lost. And it's like, well, there's two to blame, of course, but you got to get back to yourself.
And first thing I want to comment on there is every time you talk about your wife, it like warms my heart because it's just so clear how you admire her and all of that. I think it's very cool. On the authenticity, I think that kind of ties back to the creepy factor too, right? I think for me, I went through, I think, a similar journey to you. I wasn't really sure who I was. I say all the time I was meandering around in my 20s. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how I wanted to show up in the world. I didn't have all the information that I have now, good and bad. And I think what I really figured out through, of course, growing up, therapy, I've always journaled, but actually doing deeper journaling, right? Like I'd always kind of write down who I liked, who I didn't like, something that went wrong, but not the why, which is the why do I feel this way? Not that I feel this way. Why do I feel this way? And so I really got comfortable with myself at 30, 31, maybe 32, where I was just like, you know what? I'm a good guy. I do the right thing. It's like my ethos. I really try to do the right thing. I treat other people how I want to be treated, which is the thing I took from the Bible to apply to life is the golden rule. Absolutely. And I am just going to be myself. And I took that same methodology because when I was going on Love is Blind, I remember I was like, I'm pretty confident. I am who I am. I'm not going to be manipulated because I don't act outside of my value system. And if somebody likes me for me, great. If not, fine. But the best thing that happened is through that whole experience, I stayed true to myself. And I even have a post from earlier this year, because the last year and a half before this year were the worst of my life. I had days I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I just very dark days. And one of the things that always stuck with me is I'm like, I've made it this far. I am resilient and I've done it with integrity. And there's not a lot of people that have integrity. And a lot of times it holds you back in the world, according to the world structure. But I kept integrity. And when I meet people, or people more so in my own life that are like, it's funny because I saw you on TV and I was worried you were going to be an asshole, or you were going to turn out to be an idiot or mean, and I actually just saw you being you, but on TV. And I think it's the warmest feeling. Or I have people that follow me that are the way you stayed true to yourself and your values through your very public divorce, and everybody commenting on your UCAN Foundation, and people dragging you through the mud about, having issues finding a job, and just stayed true to yourself the whole time. And I can sleep at night, and I think other people can too, but that authenticity if you hold on to it and you find out who you are and you show up that way, the right person's going to walk into your life and be there, and you'll shed the rest. You will shed the rest. And that's okay. And it may be hard. And I know you went through it with your friends, but if you show up and you're creepy to someone, but you're being yourself, they're not for you.
Right.
If you show up
creepy, you're not the right one for them, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So just be yourself, right? That's your message. I'm summing it up, I guess, for you, but that's what you're saying is like, just be yourself. And if you're creepy to someone, they're not for you. They're not your person.
And live your life. That's the other thing. So, here I was on a date, going to see live music. I was just doing my thing, and so I always tell people, what do you like to do? Do you like to play tennis? Well, do a tennis league, join some kind of a tennis club. You like to rock climb? There's a lot of rock climbing things. You like to cook? There's cooking classes. Do you be the kind of person that you want to be? And in that vein, you'll meet someone who hopefully is also living their authentic self. You just got to live your life, and the interesting piece for me. So I had been in a long marriage, a 25-year marriage. And it came to the kids, graduated and grew up and left. And it just came to the end. There's a big story there.
Yeah.
Don't need to get into details. We grew apart. We connected over religion, and here we were non-religious, and it just wasn't there. The compatibility piece just wasn't there anymore. Mm-hmm. So here I am, launched into singleness. I'm lost. I'm like you talked about it. It's like the darkest days of my life. And I did the work on myself to get myself to a happy place, to where I finally found myself saying, you know what? I like myself finally. I like who I am. I like what I stand for. I just like me. And I'm okay if I'm single forever. Like if this is life, I'm cool with this. And it wasn't too long after that was like the universe was like, now you're ready.
Yeah.
It was like the universe is going, aha, you have received the gift of you're okay with it. Now I can bring you a partner, because people say, I'm looking for Mr. Right. I say, but you know what? It's more important to be right before you look for the right person. Like you have to be right with yourself and look in the mirror and say, you know what? Yeah, I'm good. And not in a cocky way, but just I'm in a confident way. Yes. And then you present yourself out into the world, and people they'll reflect off of your reflection of yourself. If you don't like yourself, you're projecting to other people, and they're going to look at you and go, I don't like that.
A huge metal festival in Roseville at Goldfields, and that's in Northern California. I would definitely want to repost this. So if anyone can, it's $15 at the door, and I'm hosting the Battle of the Bands Metal Festival, and I'll be doing a burlesque performance by, in this moment, Maria Brink. So definitely come out and come support us.
We'll put that link below in the show notes if anyone's out there and wants to go. So you're dancing, you dance, but in between your 20s and where you are now, getting ready to put on your dancing shoes. Is that what we say? Dancing shoes?
I'll be in high heels. Yeah.
High heels. Yeah. For burlesque. Yeah.
Yeah.
You did some radio show hosting. How did you get in that? How did you decide that? I know you went to school for that too, right? You got a broadcast.
But I entered school as pre-law to take over the family law firm. And, and then I found out that radio was an easy A. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Okay,
I entered as
that's
pre-law.
Crazy.
I know. And then I wanted to party. I'll be honest. I joined a sorority, Tri Delta, and I was captain of the college dance team. And I was so busy with extracurriculars and partying that pre-law was a really difficult major for me in college. So to be completely blunt, I found out from someone on the basketball team that radio was an easy A. And so you should do like a radio show for a semester. And I tried it out in 2004 and I loved it. I just did an 80s hair metal, played crew all night and talked about what was going on campus and fell in love. And so I just switched to communication and did that for 4 years. And just, I love radio.
That's awesome. And you were doing a morning show too. Morning shows are hot. Especially, yes. When did you do those? What years did you do the morning show?
2014 to 2015, I was on the morning show Bueller, Brett, and Stef with Rock 96.7 in Modesto, and that was a lot of fun. You have to show up at 4 a.m. though. As much as it's fun, you're on your P's and Q's. You're live at 5 a.m. So for an hour, you're researching what's going on. You also have people that just start hating you because of your opinion or what's going on. So you have to be a little bit more careful when you're this local character and you're grocery shopping and someone doesn't agree with what you're saying. So I didn't realize also how taxing it can be on you. But then I decided to be a mom and have 2 kids. So I took a radio break.
And when they have that too, they see you as such a one-dimensional person that they hear on the radio, and you completely lose everything that's behind the human being besides what you say on the radio, and probably the music you play too. That's crazy.
And even men, I know things have changed now, but obviously I've always known sex sells, and especially in rock radio, it's something that the correlation's huge. And so I would wear the station's bikini and show up to events, and men just really went crazy though. They went way too derogatory or into it. They didn't view me as like, wait, I'm also just a person and not like a character all the time. That because I would talk about wild things and I would have sex talk with Stef and stuff, but also I can be boring and normal and have regular conversations. And I think that's hard for people to understand when you're on the radio. And
you're almost playing a character, and then you're playing that character in real life, but in a bikini, and people probably look at you like you're a prop of some sort.
Yes. Yeah. Or like that you're retarded. I'm not that smart. I don't have anything upstairs. That was like a common theme of, no, I actually went to college for radio, but I don't know. I like to play up the fun silliness. And I will say I'm known for pushing the boundary with bands interviews and asking some inappropriate questions or that are on the wild side, because I want something to be different. And that's why the bands, I think, remember me. A lot of guys sit down and they do technical questions on the 3rd album, on the 4th guitar riff when you did this. I don't know music like that. I wish I did. I want to know, like, what groupie did you just have on? Why did you cheat on your wife and write that song? Like something kind of outlandish and a silly question that other people don't ask.
Well, and I think too, when you ask those silly questions, or you go like, you're almost leveling up, because people who maybe are a really big fan of the band want to know why this specific lyric on this specific album and this specific song was a certain thing or what it meant. But like, that's not something that somebody who enjoys music or enjoys the band or knows a song or two is going to enjoy. But those kinds of questions that you're asking, I think it would be more entertaining to anyone, because it's almost like a little bit behind the scenes, but not behind the scenes of like the intricacies of the music.
Yeah. Or if I can make a band or director that's very famous and well liked feel a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit silly and shock them with a question, I kind of like that. I don't know.
What's your most shocking question you asked, and who'd you ask it to?
So I would say the way it all turned out, right? Because I've asked a lot of shocking questions, but the full package of the interview was Kelly Hansen, the lead singer of Foreigner. I said, what's the wildest thing to happen on stage? Oh, I love Foreigner too. And you got to see this interview clip. Kelly Hansen goes, I shit my pants. And I'm just like, oh, he's joking, right? And then he goes into detail. It's one of my most popular interview clips on YouTube. And he couldn't poop for 2 weeks. So we took a laxative a couple hours before he went on stage, thinking it would take a while to work. No, as he's singing, he shit on stage.
No.
And yeah. And that is replayed a lot. And so I feel like that was it turned out to be one of the wilder responses.
That is crazy. Don't take a laxative if you've got to perform, or you're stuck somewhere, or you can't. I was like, actually, like, I ate something that did not sit well with me the other day, and I was like researching laxatives, because usually this is such a weird conversation, but like, usually I am very good bowel movement. Like, it's consistent. I'm consistent, but my stomach is sensitive, so it gets upset sometimes. I usually go the other way, not the like constipated way, but I was feeling like really, really full and bloated. And I was looking at laxatives, and I didn't know this. This was literally a couple days ago. I didn't know this, but some of them work in like 30 minutes, but some of them take 24 hours to 72 hours to work. And they're like different kinds. So he may have just grabbed the wrong one, and whoops.
I know. And I feel bad for him, but that was That was cute. And then just a lot of like wild girls rushing on tour buses and just meeting bands naked, you know, backstage. And you're just like, wow, like why? Like what? I don't know. A lot
That's
of
such an
thirsty fans.
Oh yeah, that's such an aggressive move. But would you say that's the culture? Because you've traveled a lot with bands. Is that the culture like back then? Yeah, is that still the culture, do you think, or has it
I'm
changed?
out of the what's going on right now. The
Yeah.
first time I'll be backstage in several years is Aftershock Music Festival, October 10th. So I am curious to know what's going on because yeah, it was 2018 I worked Aftershock, but before
Okay.
then it was like several years ago. But you know what's fascinating? So the girls that do just like get topless and wait by the buses, usually maybe they can get a hookup, right? And that the hookup does happen, but they're not taken seriously. The band actually wants to have, or most musicians, conversations. They want to help write music with someone. They want to have deep conversations. They might even want to read a book with you. So if a chick is just getting naked or offering them some kind of like sexual enticing behavior right away, it's going to be a turn off for something serious in the long term.
Mm. Yeah, but I guess if you catch them at the right moment, maybe they'll go for something like that. But that makes sense. That totally makes sense. I think
I do
that's
see a lot of cheating. I think that's what's hard for me is it's weird.
mm,
I've been not cheated on. I've been around a lot of people cheating, and that's where I feel like my trust issues have come with a lot of wives fly in and they're all happy and they're kissing, and then the second they're back on tour, or they're stopping by the radio station, they have another girlfriend or a new side chick.
so
So
that's funny
it's a
because you
bummer.
think like me as an outsider, and I enjoy rock music a lot. I think we probably enjoy a lot of the same music. And I actually heard you on some other show that I listened to earlier today too. You just went to like Papa Roach, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. How
Yeah,
was
I was
that?
just
Just
that was
while I'm
really
thinking
fun.
about it.
I had Jacoby and Jerry, the lead singer and guitarist of Papa Roach, on my show with Playboy Radio, I think in 2010, and that was we sat down for like 40 minutes. And I have some highlight clips up on my socials
Very
now. But
cool.
they did an acoustic set last minute downtown Sacramento for free. They announced it 2 days prior.
Oh
And
wow.
I had to run downtown and go see them. And Jacoby is such a sweetheart. He's really big on mental health. And you see that he does his daily, what he's grateful for every single day and
Oh,
posts
I
it.
love that.
And he's a talent and he's a sweetheart. Like a lot of people, some bands I've been fans of, and then you interview and they're kind of mean or rude or running late and it bums you out
Mm.
because you're like, oh, I really liked you. But not Papa Roach is one of those bands that's really great.
What would you say if there was one thing that you could do in your work that you would want to do to like change the world? Or maybe it's around men's mental health. I know we've been talking a lot about that. Like, what's that one thing that you would do or you think that we should be thinking about in changing?
Yeah, I mean, the whole reason I've been trying to like break the public speaking space is because every day I feel like I'm saying the same message to one person at a
Individual.
time.
Yep.
And I'd rather to a bigger group of people because my mission is to reframe what therapy should look like. I think it's a disservice that we are thinking that therapy, as you're going and you're talking about the same thing every session, or the issue of the week, you don't have structure to the session. It's not evidence based, right?
Mm.
Insurance companies are getting smarter and they're asking for therapists and social workers to now provide evidence that their therapy is working. I think therapy should be a lot less talking and a lot more doing. There should be a level of like, empathy, validation, and then there should be a kind of a nitty gritty piece to it where it's like, let's get up and do this, even though you don't feel like doing it. So I would just love to be able to like break that and get people better. Like I can't tell you. And the whole reason I started this was because the amount of people that would come to me and say, I wish I knew this 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You taught me more in the last 2 weeks than I've learned in the last 25 years of therapy. And therapy should not be long-term. That is you should not be seeing your therapist for 5, unless you're doing it on a very like maintenance level. Like, okay, you're going like once every like month or two. And it's just, you're not really like necessarily looking to change anything super dramatic or drastic. Like you're just really going as an upkeep type of thing. But if you're symptomatic and you have struggles in your life, like there should be a titration off and you should go find
Yeah.
it. So
That's interesting. I've been seeing mine for longer than that, but it ebbs and flows. So it's like there's maintenance mode where it's like once a month, once every 2 months, and then there's reality TV time where it's like once a week, and it just changes, right? But there's different things that kind of come up. But she actually told me to evaluate maybe a year. No, it was a little longer, maybe 2 years ago, where she was like, take some time and really think about, like, have we gone as far as we can go, kind of thing. But
Yeah.
that was true because the reality TV thing, like, I always tell them, like, you're the expert because you helped me get to a good place before, you supported, helped me during, and then you helped me after. And so, like, go write a book about that or something. But yeah, so I think there is something there that I agree with, where if you're just going and it's this routine, you're talking about the same stuff over and over, and nothing's changing or nothing's getting better, your symptoms aren't improving, your behaviors aren't improving, you're not dialing up the good stuff and dialing up the bad stuff, what are you doing? Like, you're just not probably a right fit for each other.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate you saying that because because I've made some reels on this and people get real upset when I'm like, there should be less talking and more doing. And people are like, where are you getting such bold claims? I'm like, actually, so the number one way to treat anxiety related disorders is to behaviorally have someone do it. It's not to talk about why they're not doing it. It's not to figure out why they're, like, literally in session. You're scared of driving? We're driving in session. You're scared of the elevator? We're going in the elevator, right? But like,
that's why I was saying, like, 90% of it is done outside of therapy.
Or
Yeah.
if you have a good therapist, you're doing it in because it's like a trainer. You wouldn't go to, I use this analogy all the time, but you would never go to a trainer and talk about why you're not working out or talk about the workouts you're going to do. You would literally do it, and then you would go home and you would practice again. And that's why working out is so effective. But sorry, the reason I said all that was because the way that you're describing it, I don't want people to get confused where I'm like, don't be in therapy, and if you are, then like you're effed. It's like, what we call is like skill acquisition. So I do test measures with my clients. 9 times out of 10, what I see in the first month is this. And then I see this, which is what we call skill mastery. And then sometimes there's a hit, like you go back reality TV stuff, right? And then you re-up therapy. And then you come back down and but this whole, like, I go to my therapist weekly for years, or like there's not a structure to the session. Like, I want to get that out of like, that's my mission, because people waste too much time and energy on that, and it keeps people stuck.
I actually agree with you 100% on that. I completely agree with you on that. Did you ever get threats or cease and desists, or did you ever fear for your safety? I don't know how deep this goes, but
I've heard stories of people that have gotten threats and like have had like sextortion, sort of like their intimate photos leaked and stuff. And we have episodes on the podcast about this. Yeah, it's wild. So I've heard like the worst of the worst. And like you, a lot of times I'm like, thank God that didn't happen. Thank God I wasn't in that situation and someone didn't hack my phone or, whatever. And it always just makes me be like, double authentication, like double checks on everything because of those things. Because I've heard those stories happening. For me personally, what happened when LuLaRich came out was I had, I don't know, maybe half the TikTok followers I have now. I'm like 150,000 followers or something. And so a decent amount of people were following me. And I was like, yeah, like we're going to go live. We're going to do all this stuff. Like join us here. And I said too much. I let the enemy know my plan. And so what they did, I don't know who it was. It must have just been LuLaRoe people in a group chat. And they ended up getting my TikTok account banned for like bullying and illegal goods and services and like violence and weapons and all kinds of random things, which just because I had so many violations because of this whole like press junket of me doing this, they were shutting me down constantly. Because of that, it was like an instant, like just week shutdown until they could investigate. And I think I got my account back like 3 days later, but I couldn't go live to like share LuLaRich coming out and those things. And then there were like a lot of people will make videos about me. They don't say my name, but I know who they're talking.
Right.
The DSA, which is the lobbying efforts behind multi-level marketing, like in the government,
which let's get to
Big
that.
Pyramid. Yeah, we will. But they've mentioned me like in their propaganda. Like they've mentioned things I've done as like the haters. And I was like, so they're mentioning me like if a little nothing person who's selling vitamins is mad and mentions me. That's really the worst that's ever happened, is like my accounts have gotten banned where people just like make videos about me.
That account thing. So this scares me, because why is it that an organization can get you, an individual, banned for an investigation? Like, can you get them banned for an investigation into their
Right?
culty MLM scheme? Like, that's the stuff to me that is like so scary, and like you could have lost your account forever, right? And I am under firm belief that I've been shadow banned across social, and I'm not surprised, because it's the same production companies that can get you a blue check at the snap of a finger, and hook you up with all of these, Instagram live this or TikTok live that, and all of these things, right? My content like goes nowhere now. Even on LinkedIn, I used to have a very engaging product marketing flow. I would get like speaking opportunities at product marketing events. I would have people reaching out asking me to mentor them because they wanted to get into product marketing. I'll post a very helpful, informative article that used to get probably like 50, 60 interactions with it. Now 2, 3 impressions, 500 if even.
Wow.
And it's like that on social too. Like it's so funny. Like I posted a clip from a podcast a few weeks ago, actually a couple months ago now, and I think it got like 7,000 views, which it's a lot for, but for 300 some thousand followers, that's not a lot.
Right. No.
And a guy who was my guest has, I think, 40 or 50,000, posted another clip, and his went insane.
Wow.
It's like, so my point on that is they have a lot of power. They have the power to get your TikTok shut down, right? They have the power, potentially, maybe, I'm making assumptions, shadow ban me so that I'm only in an echo chamber with the people that already follow me, right? I've been interviewed even recently by very it's almost like, feels like entrapment, the way that they're trying to get you to defame people and talk about like respond to crazy things that production has said or whatever, right? So it's like they come at you in ways that like you can't even envision or can't even imagine, and that has to be scary because you're whistleblowing, and it's not just a powerful company or two companies, it's an industry that is lobbying, which I had no idea until I met you. So does it scare you? Like, does it scare you that they can theoretically shut down your free speech and censor you if they get enough power or you become a big enough threat?
I mean, I know that what we're doing, like as a collective, like I'm just one person in this entire collective, like of people who are speaking out against multi-level marketing and the anti-MLM community. So I'm not really super worried, because I know that what we're doing is hurting them. And I know that they know that if they take one of us down, we're just going to come back more, because it'll be like, they took down so-and-so. Like, so I think that there's a balance there where they don't want to cause too much attention on this community, because they don't want anybody to look at it. They want us to be like, they're just crazy. They're just failures is what their thing is. So they can't like bring too much attention to us, because then it negates what they're saying, is that we're nobodies, we're nothings. Don't waste your time. We're not going to waste our time. So I'm not super worried about them coming at, excuse me, I'm a hiccup. I'm not super worried about them coming after me, just because I know that I have facts and they don't. Like,
they have opinions.
They can't prove me wrong. So no, I've never gotten a cease or desist. I've never been sued. But the other thing is, I use a lot of protective language. I have 2 friends who are lawyers that work in the anti-MLM space with me. And so, and they're listeners. And so if there was anything ever, they'd be like, Roberta, you got to cut that out, like immediately. I'm not worried about that. I have people from the FTC that listen to me, that listen to my show as what companies to look into or what to keep tabs on. I've met them. They were like, we're huge fans. I was like, are you what? Huh? You? The FTC listens to my show? Like, it was that sort of feeling. So I know that we're making moves. I know that we're making waves, and I know that we're making them nervous. they've put a lot of money into trying to get Gen Z to be like into MLM. And
They've got to be way ahead of the curve on that.
They're
With TikTok?
They're so terrified that Gen Z is not going to be pro MLM, that they're going to be anti MLM, because it's their whole new generation of victims.
Yeah.
And so many people that are in Gen Z are realizing the generational trauma that comes with multi-level marketing, because their parents did it. They watched their grandmother, they watched their mom just sell Mary Kay, and they were never home, and they saw the red flags or the weirdness, and they're like, what was that ridiculous thing you were doing? And they're learning and avoiding it. I mean, there have been
people
multiple
like you.
articles. Yeah. And then there's people like me where I'm like, we love you, Gen Z. And they come and they find us and they go, oh my gosh, yes, my mom did this. And they've got all these stories. I've even had Gen Z people on the show to talk about like their experiences growing up as a child of a serial MLMer.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Do you think it's like an addiction?
Yeah.
Like gambling? Because I was thinking again about your former friend or a friend or whatever you want to call him, who was going to use their mortgage to buy more, buy more LuLaRoe. Is it
LuLaRoe? You were right.
LuLaRoe. Yeah. I'm thinking Lula Rich and LuLaRoe, and it came out somewhere in between.
So much. There's so many.
What do you think are what do you think are the most, I'll put it in two questions, like the most self-sabotaging thing you see your daters do, and then what is well, let's start with that. Like, so if we swing into dating, like what's the self-sabotage? I know, as an example, like I said, I self-sabotage because I don't put myself in those situations. I don't want to be single. I think I have a lot to bring to a relationship. And you know, it's hard because, you know, you got to overcome the fear. You've got to overcome the endless opportunities. If you're going to be on an app, you've got to overcome the fear to talk to someone in person, whether it's at the grocery store, or at a bar, or at an event, or whatever that is. But like, you know, where do you see from your experience with your clients over the years, what are the really top self-sabotaging efforts people do?
Yeah, I mean, I would say kind of like the chasing the feeling to some degree, because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for some of my clients where like they know the person isn't a good fit on some level, but they're chasing that feeling. And so when it doesn't work out, it kind of is like, well, I kind of figured this, you know, wouldn't. But part of it too is, you know, those kind of like the unavailable people kind of give you that excitement. So like kind of really looking, they know who they shouldn't be going for, but they are still kind of drawn to those. Yeah. And then like the being super dismissive, that one is a big one that frustrates me, is like, I really have to beg my clients to give people a chance.
Yeah. And do you think that's stemming from like the fear of getting hurt or past trauma or experiences, or?
Yeah. And I think for sure. And I think also if you meet someone who, let's say if you have a non-secure attachment style and you meet someone who is securely attached, they're probably not going to create that spark that you're looking for because they're too stable. You know, like part of the high of, let's say, like if you're, you know, a non-secure attachment is the maybe like inconsistency of someone texting you or reaching out. But a securely attached person is going to consistently reach out or like let you know, kind of like what you said, they're going to, you know, someone's going to tell you like, hey, I'm interested. Or if someone is interested in you, you're going to know. There really shouldn't be any guesswork around that. At least like for someone to be, there shouldn't be any guesswork that someone is interested in getting to know you better. I'm not saying you're going to know that the relationship is a relationship is actually going to manifest or anything like that. I'm not saying that, but there really should be no guesswork that someone is interested in wanting to get to know you better. And that's not the way we date. But that's not the way we date.
I 100% agree with you. So we'll spin it positive. So I agree with that. I think it's dating with intention. It's dating with, you know, leading with being vulnerable, right? Being open to it, putting yourself in situations where you can maybe attract the kind of person that you want. I think all of that is great. But what I wanted to get your take on is, what are some, obviously I just said some of them probably, but what are some of the ways that you would recommend to your clients, to your, or advice you'd give yourself on getting out there like more intentionally? Obviously, you said getting on the apps, doing things in person. What are some of those ways you think people can be more intentional and have more success dating?
Yeah, I mean, do whatever hobby you want. I mean, like pickleball's been all the rage for a few years now, or join a running club, or join a gym. But the one thing, like no matter what you pick, whether you even go to some networking events or join a meetup group or something like that, is you have to initiate conversation. Don't wait for the other person to do it, or for whatever person you're interested in. Because like with my female clients, they like their belief, like overarching belief is, well, if a guy thought I was hot, he would come over. Like if he saw me across the room and he thought I was attractive, like he would come over. I'm like, no, he's not. I'm like, he's too scared.
I can tell
like,
you he's too scared.
Yeah, I go, but women expect that, and I'm like, you have to give some kind of a signal. Like some of my male clients even would be like, I need a neon sign over their head, being like, come talk to me, come talk to me. And so
because it's so
like,
easy to like feel the rejection, and now too, like I think maybe it was COVID, maybe it was before that, but like I feel like I don't know the difference between creeping on someone and intentionally trying to get a conversation started.
yeah, and I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think people put too much pressure also in like in real life events, or just like meeting someone in real life, where any kind of conversation means that the person wants to get my number. It's like they're just having a conversation, like you have to start somewhere. So take the pressure off. And I mean, worst case, if someone talks to you and you're not attracted to them, or something came up that you just don't want to go on a date with them, you could just say like, oh, I have a boyfriend, or I have a girlfriend, or I have a partner, whatever. It's like, you could just let them down. Yeah. Be kind, but, and sometimes even like, I like using humor. I mean, I was out with a friend a few weeks ago, and I don't know, I mean, I'm older than you, but like I've been known to be the oldest person at the bar sometimes. And so
I feel like I am. So,
and so we were in Old Town, and I'm like, oh my God, we're literally in a bar with like 20 somethings.
I was going to say, you went to Old Town. I call that's the demo. Like I don't go there because they've all seen Love is Blind, and it's just going to be
I could understand
25 to 27-year-olds.
Yeah. I mean, but I was just, my friend and I were walking around, and I just decided to go to a guy, and I'm just like, how old are you? I literally just asked him how old he was. And he's like, I'm 40.
Old was he?
He was 40.
Okay.
And then I got to know his friend group, and I'm like, okay, I'm not the oldest. I'm the second oldest here, because one of his buddies was like older than me. But he actually made a comment to me. He's like, I can't believe you came up to me. He's like, that was so cool. Like nobody ever comes up to me. And I did it in such a funny way, because I was just like, I'm just checking to see if I'm the oldest person here, but that's the thing is, I think,
it's an icebreaker too.
Yeah. But like, in heterosexual relationships, I think women do still expect the man to pursue, but what women kind of sometimes maybe don't think about is, one, the rejection rate that men have to experience by being put in that role. And I would say it's not that men don't have confidence, but that fear of like, where's the line between being a creeper, or, some of my clients would even say like, well, how do I know, her 6'5" boyfriend isn't going to be coming from the bathroom or showing up later, and he's going to kick my ass, because I'm hitting on his girl. So, that kind of stuff is like making sure that you're putting in the effort as well. And like even something as simple as eye contact. Like, I mean,
which by the way, I test that out too. And
it works.
I wonder, we'll have to talk about this, but I wonder if we go to the same bars at all in the neighborhood. I'm sure we do. But I feel like even when I try to do the eye contact thing, sometimes it's like impossible to read, because it's like quick eye contact, look away, look down at phone, whatever. And I'm like, is that a look away because they're shy? Is that a look away? Like you have no clue. Right. I just feel like you have no clue because people don't give the signs.
Right. But I think it has to be repeated. So like when eye contact works for me, it would be like I would look at the guy several times throughout the night, and
Yeah.
then, he might come up. But I mean, I tested it out. I mean, I think don't quote me on this because I can't remember, but there's just like so many different ways to flirt. It's like 200 something plus ways of flirting.
Oh my gosh.
It's a ridiculous number. So, but using that to your advantage, or again, just like no pressure, like not everybody is an extrovert. Not everybody could talk to a stranger, and so sometimes like taking the pressure off, or sometimes I might have to work with a client. Like, how can you practice talking to strangers in completely, non-romantic situations, like strike up a conversation with your Starbucks barista, or just talk to, I mean, we kind of were joking about the post office earlier, but like strike up a conversation at the post office, be able to just
everyone's equally frustrated about something if they're at the post office.
Yeah. Or like where, and this was probably like also maybe a little bit in the pandemic, but like I would tell clients like where, if appropriate, but like where, maybe like a t-shirt of your favorite band, or like a school that you went to. Like my brother-in-law got me this Cubs shirt or Cubs hat that has the ASU like logo on
nice.
the side.
Yeah.
People are like, "Are you a Sun Devil?" all the time, because like, so I'm like, "Yeah, how did you know?" And it's just something like a conversation starter, or like pay attention, right? Like how can you, like, you're at a bar and someone orders a drink and it's like, "Oh, what's in that drink?" Or like, "Hey, is anyone sitting here? Oh, do you come here?" And not the "do you come here often?" Kind of cheesy line, but
well, in this
like,
neighborhood, we know where people go often. So it's like, I've seen you here before on a Thursday.
Yeah. I mean, but also it's like you could kind of tell, you'll be able to tell is like someone open to conversation or not, but take the pressure off, just have a conversation, and then if appropriate, then, if you're both single, whatever, it seems like interest, then you can kind of ask for a date or say, "Hey, I'd like to get to know you better," or whatever.
We're going to be seeing a lot of workplace reform over the course of our lifetime, and that is hope that I have to hold on to keep pushing forward.
Well, and I think, and I want to talk a little more about hustle culture, but that's a good segue to get to something else I want to ask you about. Senator Bernie Sanders introduced a 32-hour work week bill in the Senate, which makes the 32-hour work week the standard in the United States, and you keep the same pay, which having not read the bill myself, which I don't plan on doing, I'm curious how that would be monitored. I'm curious how if I go to a new job now, I'm not getting less of a salary if this is the law of the land. So there's details I don't have, but 32-hour work week to me, this seems twofold. And actually, it became a discussion with my friends on Saturday when we were celebrating St. Patrick's Day in Chicago, which is a total day weekend of its own. But we were talking about this, and there was actually like good conversation. Like, I'm pro worker. I, like you, came from working class. My dad lost his job in a refrigerator factory when I was probably 4 or 5 years old. My mom had to go from being, taking care of us, me and my 2 sisters, to work at a toy store. They eventually, the marriage didn't work. You can imagine the pressures of that on different people. But after that, like, there were so many. So my dad ended up, he's an electrician at a hospital, and he's been doing that pretty much since. But like my uncle, who was in manufacturing, like I've seen him lose 5-6 jobs over the course of my life. And it's just completely disrupted his life to points where he was maybe going to lose his house and all of these things. And my whole point of sharing all of this is that I think the 32-hour work week isn't that crazy. We have it was the 40s, I think, when we established the 40-hour work week, right?
In the 1920s, it became mainstream. Sorry.
Okay, it was the 20s.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I should have just asked you. Of course, you would know that. So the 32-hour work week, from my view, in concept, and I look at things like this as marketing, right? Like, you need to explain the value. And the way I look at like politicians, like, I just need you to do what I want. I don't need to know how you do it. So we want a 32-hour work week. Go get it done. Legislate it how you need to legislate it. Regulate it how you need to regulate it. But I'm all for it. And I think that in corporate, and what some of my friends were saying, like the corporate space, you're never really off. You're always getting pinged on Teams. You're always getting emails. You're always thinking about it and stuff like that. So their questions were, well, how are we even going to implement something like that? So I'm just curious, like, what are your thoughts on the 32-hour work week? How do you think that would benefit or not benefit and help people who are experiencing burnout, who are overworked? And do you think it's something that could realistically happen in the United States?
Yeah, I'm all for it. Like 1,000%, I will shout it from the rooftops. I think it'll be difficult to get past. But like you said, it's been like 100 years since the 9 to 5 started, and we've had so much technological innovation since then to recover time. And we're using that recovered time just to work more. And we're long overdue for that kind of workplace reform. So yes, I am here
That's
for
so
it.
straightforward.
And the nature of our work is different. We're not on manufacturing lines to produce automobiles the way that the people who came before us were, right? Like work is different now. And even the 9 to 5 as it stands, no one is really working 40 hours a week. We're doing a lot of task switching, we're wasting time in meetings, wasting time sending messages and emails for companies that honestly, in my opinion, there's a lot of companies who have no benefit to society other than to earn people top money, right? That there's an infrastructure that we need where we should be creating jobs, but like, do we really need another mental health app? Or do we need systemic change to improve people's mental health? So yes, we are long overdue for workplace reform. It doesn't just benefit employees. Like obviously we use our weekends if you work traditional 9 to 5. It's like Saturday is for going out and having fun, and then Sunday is for errands and catching up, and we don't have space to truly like do something for ourselves. So I think
and the Sunday scaries.
Yes.
Sundays reserved for the Sunday scaries.
Yeah, the dread, the existential dread. So I think having that extra day will really help us show them that feeling more rejuvenated to do better work for the company. And we've already seen companies in the UK and non-US companies do this, where it not only makes employees more productive and increases the bottom line, but it reduces healthcare costs for the employer and it reduces employee turnover costs for the employer. So everyone benefits.
90+% of the companies that were in that study are keeping the 4-day work week. I think it's 94%.
Exactly. So the people who are really resistant against it, you have to zoom out and say, like, our purpose existence here isn't just to fill as many of our waking hours with work. Like, how do you want to use those recovered hours to enjoy your life and spend time with your family? And if you're using work to not have to spend time with your family, that's a whole other conversation.
I actually was just going to bring that up.
You know what I
was going to bring it because there's people, there's people that, and I think we're seeing this also become a issue of the moment, is like the return to office. And I feel like the people that are pushing to return to office, it's twofold, right? There's the obvious like commercial real estate issue. I don't think a lot of people think about, but we got a lot of, I'm in Chicago, a lot of commercial real estate that's empty here, but let's remove that and talk about the people factor of it. And I think there are people that the office is an escape from the life that they're not happy in. And I think that's an issue that isn't talked about enough. And I think that it reflects a lot of people. And then I think there's the other purpose of it, which is they want to keep an eye on people. They want that control. They want you in that office so that they can monitor what you're doing, keep you, continue to have, less freedom, right? To run to the grocery store or take a doctor's appointment or all these things that like would have to be done on evenings or weekends, and or take a day off, right, to go to the doctor for an hour. It's like these things are freedoms that make our lives a little bit better when you work remote. Now, I do get the collaboration, and there's some people that like the collaboration, so I actually support like a hybrid model. But anyway, I feel like there's this element of control to this, and if you give people more time to themselves, they're worried they're going to lose that control that they have.
Yeah, because they're going to have time to start to ask questions about why things are operating the way that they are.
That's so true.
Like, I've forbid people recover the commuting time per day to be able to read a book or explore a new hobby. You know what I mean? It's like, no, if we're not commuting and working our asses off, then we must not care enough about our work. And like that's the furthest thing from the truth. It's like, no, how do we nurture our souls so we can show up in our lives, which work is a huge part of, feeling good? Like, why is that such a hard concept for people to grasp?
and I can, my personal experience with that is we went remote when everybody else did. And then I just remember as time went on, like not even months, like weeks, I was like, I'm actually never going to go back to the office full time. And the reason being that so my mornings, and I think other people can relate to this, are stress, like immediate stress the moment you wake up, because now you're on the clock. Right. And that's not a good way to start your day. Like I have all my stuff snoozed until 8 a.m. because when I get up at 6:30, 7, usually it's like 6:37, I need that hour to get my mind right. And I don't want to be like, and take the dog out and drink some coffee and go on a walk. And that is such a benefit to me to be able to start my day that way, as opposed to getting up, rushing to get to the office, worrying about that first meeting, stressing about how long the commute is, if there's traffic, if the train's taking too long, like all of this stuff that is really beyond your control, adding stress to you first thing in the morning. And I think the amount of years that are going to be saved on people's lives from not having that stress 5 days a week should be studied, because it's a big deal.
Yeah, I agree. And I love that you carve out that time for yourself. I do the same for myself in the mornings, because we have created this culture where it's easy to become addicted to stress, where people are waking up and immediately reaching for their phones, and they see the red bubbles and they allow themselves to be influenced by the things that are happening around them immediately, rather than saying like, here's how I want to feel in my day, and I need to create space for that to happen. And even if I can find 10 minutes or an hour, like that time is worth it for me to be able to show up in my life the way that I need to in order to feel good.
The work that I'm doing now with Donna's Law, which is in legacy to my mom, Donna, has very much added a whole new dimension of her life and her purpose on this planet post-mortem, which is so profound. And to be able to bring that to her life that was not everything that she wanted it to be, and for her to be able to be used in this way to now save other lives is very exciting work to me.
It is, and it's needed work. And what I find so interesting, and I'm going to ask you to explain Donna's Law, but your story with your mom, would you like to share some of that with us and let us know what inspired you to start Donna's Law?
Sure. My mom, Donna, was a really good mom, and she moved down to New Orleans right after I moved down. I came down, and then she came to visit for Thanksgiving and never left.
From where?
And in that time, we created art together, and we worked together to create the parades, and she found a beautiful partner, Pat. And also parallel to that, she was battling bipolar, and she was also in the ups and downs of the difficulty of medicating that illness, and often would be between medications, or medications would stop working, and but then there would be long periods of times where her medications did work well. And during a period at the end of her life, she was struggling really bad with the side effects of a medication that was black label and causes suicidality and impulsivity and psychosis. And she was experiencing those side effects, as well as some really intense physical side effects like extreme tremors and pain and insomnia. And in that period, our family just really jumped into action, and we did everything with her at the lead of taking care of herself and making her own choices, and her being empowered with the support of like good health care and her psychiatrist that she was very pleased with. And she, right before her death, was voluntarily committed 3 times because of the suicidality and impulsivity that was going on.
And was that from the you guys assume that was from the medication, or is that something she had struggled with?
I think that it's really hard to separate like what is bipolar and what is medication about bipolar, and I'm really unqualified
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah, no,
separate that. And my
no,
opinions change all the time. So
of
I've been
course,
watching what bipolar is for about 30 years of my life with my mom, and
it's
what
changed
that
so much
means has
too.
changed so much. Like when I was a kid, it was called manic depression, and now there's a lot more awareness about how certain medications can trigger it in people. And so, for example, like with my family, I think it's very important that we're aware of the sort of neurochemical genetic reactions that we can have to certain drugs, which is what happened with my mom over and over again in different ways. On the day that she died, she was under the care of my stepdad, and he had quit his job to stay home with her and make sure that she was okay every day. And she had written to her doctor begging for help. We had been discussing another inpatient scenario for her, which she was really scared about. And we had also kind of run out of options there because her doctor wasn't approving it. And so that morning, my mom got on her phone and she searched the words "how to hang yourself," and Google showed her information that showed her that if she tried to hang herself, she would likely become a quadriplegic, and there were all these ways it could go wrong, and that the best option would be for her to purchase a handgun. And then she
Wait, that's
yeah.
Google's search results? That's
Well,
what the
like, yeah,
algorithm?
pretty much. I
What the
mean, like when I
fuck?
looked, I got her phone after she died, and I could see the article that she read, and it had a whole like chart of all the methods, the success rate, the minutes of pain. Um, for
Why
example,
does anything show up to say call the, suicide hotline or anything? Or is it
well,
just
I would
here's
love to discuss that with Google.
okay.
I've been trying, and I have been experimenting with things on Google to see if there are ways that they are responding to, let's say, like other wording. For example, I recently searched how to kill my wife just to see if Google would recommend a handgun or not. And it didn't
Jeez.
recommend any methods on how I should kill my wife. And it only showed me things like romantic comedies about killing your wife. So it clearly knows. I, I I'm going
It
to
can do
assume
something.
that it's the legal department has been maybe subpoenaed about searches for people involving homicide, but I would imagine they haven't been subpoenaed as much for people who committed suicide because there isn't an ongoing investigation like that or an
Right.
investment in understanding what went wrong. So she then Googled gun stores, New Orleans, and it gave her directions to a gun store that was just minutes away from her. And she kind of snuck out and went there and purchased the first and only gun she's ever had. We don't have any waiting periods in Louisiana, much like the majority of America also doesn't have waiting periods. Here, we don't need permits or anything. I mean, as long as you have your ID and the right amount of money, you can purchase a gun here pretty much immediately. So she purchased that gun, and then she purchased a box of rose gold pink bullets that were for breast cancer awareness, which I feel like my mom got really like pink washed by this. And
Wow.
it's always really bothered me that in some way this like raised money for breast cancer. And it no longer does because I have been very vocal about this scenario and they
I
have
actually was
detached from
gonna
that campaign. Um,
good.
and my
What
mom
the
took,
hell? Like
I know,
anything
it's so
to
weird. Um,
pink
and
wash.
yeah, she took her purchases to the park and she shot herself at the park, um, and died there. And it was later on that an employee of the park found her and contacted the police that contacted our family.
Oh my God, that's awful.
Yeah. So Donna's law is to keep that from happening to other people and their families. The intervention that could have really helped my mom would be to have been able to opt out of her ability to purchase a gun. Had my mom been involuntarily committed all those times, she wouldn't have been able to purchase the gun, because we as a society can all agree that someone who is in psychiatric crisis might be better off without unlimited access to firearms. So
You would think.
without interfering with the Second Amendment, Donna's law enables people to voluntarily opt out. And when we think about the gun violence epidemic, what we're seeing is really this giant suicide epidemic. About 2/3 of gun deaths are suicide. And in some states, it's like 90% of gun deaths are suicide. And then the most common means of suicide is handguns and guns in general. So if we know that the most likely way that someone's going to die by suicide is this easy access to purchase a firearm, we can enable them with a really simple tool to opt out, which is what Donna's law does. And because it is voluntary and reversible, it essentially creates a voluntary waiting period for people who feel that they need it. And that can be someone like my mom, who is experiencing really extreme episodic psychosis with suicidality. But it can be anybody that just thinks that quick access to firearms might be dangerous for their future. And it's different than other types of, let's say, like red flag laws. So it's not put upon anybody, and there's no guns taken away. It's not for people that already have guns. It's more for people like my mom that under normal circumstances wouldn't be purchasing a gun like this.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Eyes Wide Open. If you enjoy the show, the best way to support us is by sharing or dropping a review. For more information and content, check out engagewithnick.com or find me on Instagram at nthompson513. Don't go through life blind. Do the work so you can show up in the world with your eyes wide open.